In the quiet hum of midnight radio, a voice once asked a question that still echoes through time. What if the aliens we've always feared were us all along? What followed were stories that blurred the boundary between science, secrecy, and the human soul. Whispers from the Nevada desert spoke of experiments so unspeakable they were buried beneath decades of silence. Reports of children altered by human hands, made to look like visitors from another world. A deception born not from space, but from power. Others claimed the skies themselves had changed. Navy pilots, scientists, and physicists began to describe movements that defied gravity and machines that ignored every known law of physics. The kind of evidence no longer confined to rumor, but captured in infrared, radar, and high definition. For the first time, the question was no longer, are UFOs real, but who controls them? From secret Pentagon programs buried in black budgets to journalists haunted by dying confessions of nuclear engineers, each revelation carried the same chill, that truth and illusion might be tools of the same design, that what we call extraterrestrial could just as easily be man-made myth, weaponized for fear, control, or distraction. And yet, in every denial, in every classified file, something deeper hums beneath the surface. A feeling that the story isn't over, that somewhere beyond the reach of politics or propaganda, there might still be something else out there. Tonight, we journey through these accounts of secret bases, impossible craft, and voices that shouldn't have spoken. Because sometimes the most terrifying discoveries aren't found in the stars, but in the shadows of our own creation. Today, we'll explore these stories, one by one, and uncover what might really be hidden behind them. The secret human experiments behind the Roswell lie. In this tense moment on the Joe Rogan Experience, investigative journalist Annie Jacobsen sits across from Joe, calm, methodical, but carrying something dark. She isn't talking about aliens the way most guests do. She's talking about the people who looked like aliens. Jacobsen claims her source, a nuclear weapons engineer, broke down in tears before revealing a secret program from 1951, a program that may have staged the most famous UFO incident in history. It wasn't from another world, she says. It was something far worse.
See, I don't have a desired outcome. I mean, I would love it if aliens were real.
Okay.
But when someone starts talking about disinformation and propaganda campaigns, but they want you to believe them.
Right.
But don't listen, I'm here telling you the truth. I'm here telling you the truth.
I'm not saying I'm telling you the truth at all. That's why I was
No,
like,
not you.
Joe, let's wait
For
till
sure not
hour
you.
3 because it's too explosive. People have such a horse in the race.
Yeah.
Already.
With aliens, you think?
Well, I mean, maybe you are neutral. I don't know. I know I'm neutral. You know?
Yeah, I will listen. I absolutely want aliens to be real. 100%.
Wouldn't it be interesting?
I'm not neutral, but
Okay.
I am neutral in my perceptions. And when I look at things, I go, I don't know about that.
Me too.
I want to see a picture. Like, what do these guys look like? I mean, what did they do to them? Did he describe what kind of surgical alterations?
I stayed with the source. I mean, after the book published, I would go and visit him. We'd sit in a Chinese restaurant and eat and talk, and I would try to get a droplet of information out of him.
And what was he doing?
Oh my God.
Avoiding it?
He avoided it. I mean, look, here's another thing. When the book came out, his wife of 65 years knew it was him. Okay? And I went out to Las Vegas and sat there in a room with the source and his wife. And she said, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you made this all up, to her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it's the truth. I mean, that's a triangular version of getting at the truth. But again, to reiterate, I believe he believes what he told me was the truth. That was the truth he was told.
I think there's certain agents that think it's fun to fuck with reporters and journalists and make things up. I really do. And I think especially when they're talking about secret information that they were sworn to protect. And then all of a sudden, they want to talk to someone that they don't even know on the sneak tip. Let's meet at a diner. I'm going to tell you everything.
That's not how we met.
Well, I mean,
Right.
however you met.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Well, we
saying?
met because I was interviewing nuclear weapons engineers who were setting off nuclear bombs in Area 51, in the Nevada test site, Area 12, Area 23. And they all said to me, you've got to talk to the top engineer of all this weaponry. And they gave me his name. And we talked for days and hours about nuclear weapons. And then, in one conversation, he began to cry and told me this story that I was like, what? What?
Why was he crying?
He was crying because he participated in our version of the human experiments. Because what the Russians do, we do. Look, I've written 5 books about this.
We altered people to make them look like aliens?
According to him, we had a small program in 1951 where we wanted to see how the Russians did what they did, how they made human beings look like this.
So what'd they do? Take prisoners or something? Like what? Who do they alter?
He said they were handicapped children.
Oh, Jesus.
And he told me that he participated in this. So again, I mean, unless you have someone that lost their mind at age 90 and was willing to tell their wife of 65 years, I lost my mind.
So he's saying that he participated in something that altered handicapped children. When you say handicapped, you mean like Down syndrome or something like that? And they made them look like aliens and then killed them? Like, what did they do with this?
This is where we get into drops of information coming out. But what I can say is he had a grandchild that was born that way. And the grandchild did not live long. The grandchild died. And it made him feel so guilty about what he had done that he felt compelled to confess, if you will. And I remember saying to him, why are you telling me this? Why don't you tell a priest? And he said, a priest would judge me, and I can tell you won't.
Why wouldn't you judge him? I'd judge him.
Well, I guess that's why I'm a born journalist, Joe, because I really try not to judge people. I mean, my new book, Surprise, Kill, Vanish, it's about assassins. It's about people who work for the CIA who do what needs to be done on the ground in the name of national security. I don't judge them. This is why, what's really at issue here is morality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, can I tell you how I got the idea for this book?
Sure, but let me, before we go any further, so...
You want to talk about the aliens?
Yeah. Was he saying that there have never been any encounters with alien spacecrafts?
He was totally neutral about aliens. He had nothing to do with aliens. He could have cared less. He didn't watch the X-Files.
And what was his take on Bob Lazar?
His take on Bob Lazar was that he probably saw something that the government had an extension of the program. I mean, he didn't know. That was speculative. We didn't talk about that. I mean, other than inference. He was very limited in the information that he would get out. But, I mean, I used 79 sources in that book that all went on the record in name. And he was the one anonymous source. But like I said, he told me after he died that I could tell the whole story.
Are you going to?
I might. I might come back.
Write another book?
Well, if you give me a break and back off of this subject, I might come back and tell you and your audience
What are you saying back off
his
the subject?
name.
This is your book. I want to promote your book. I know you want to promote your new book, but I want to promote this book as well.
I mean, I'm teasing you, right?
I know you are.
But it's like, it's an astonishing story. And I think the best line of all is that people that read about that in the very end of what we did, they go, I wish they were aliens.
So Stalin created some sort of a craft that mimicked...
You're going to read it.
Okay.
That's what you're going to do the rest of the afternoon. Nope. I'm going to come back on your show after you read it.
This is a podcast, and we're talking. I think we should probably get into this a little bit.
Okay. Come on with the questions.
Okay.
I'm used to asking the questions.
Are you? Oh, right. As a journalist, yeah. Now, Stalin and the Russians created something that mimicked a UFO, something that looked like it would be from another planet? Is that what they did?
Mothership. In those days, drones were... There was a mothership and a drone was attached to it, and it was jettisoned off. Okay? So, according...
In those days?
Well, in 1947, 48,
what do you mean by...
Well, they didn't... I mean, that was drone technology then.
Okay.
Right? So there's a mother craft, like an aircraft, and then the drone is like a small aircraft under it, and it gets jettisoned off. And that was what the craft was. It was jettisoned off. So Stalin actually, according to the source, invaded our airspace, which was the deep embarrassment to Truman.
So he invaded our airspace and then let this drone crash land on the ground with these things that turned out to be human.
Yes.
They looked like aliens, but they turned out to be humans that were manipulated surgically to look like aliens.
Yes, as a way to, and remember, I mean, not remember, but where this was, very close to a nuclear weapons base, to our White Sands military base. I mean, this is like not a place you want the Russians to be able to get near.
Right.
You know? I mean, what was interesting is at Area 51, we then went out and mimicked all of those. One of our early drones was a mimicry of that. It was the there was a M21, which was the mothership, and a D21, which was the daughter ship. So
how did they pilot them? Was it wirelessly like we do now?
No. Then it was like there was a pilot in the mothership, and they kind of let it go. Right, and it flew off. I mean, there's incredible stories of what the CIA was able to do out there at Area 51 with their air branch, you know. The technology, they're always ahead of technology. That's what's remarkable.
Well, what Bob Lazar did film that was really shocking was the filming of these drones flying around and performing these really you've seen those videos, I'm sure, right?
In the 80s, it gets really crazy with what they're able to do and what they're... But, I mean, why I like looking at history is because you can see the progression, you know? You see how science evolves, you know, bit by bit. And then there's these great breakthroughs, because what the government is always looking for is called a revolution in military affairs, right? And that's certainly what drone technology did later on, as drones became developed after the Vietnam War.
So in the 1980s, when Bob Lazar was filming all this stuff, you think this was similar to the technology that we see publicly described today in terms of like what drones are capable of?
Sure. I mean,
so
that's
they probably had something like that back then.
They're, you know, when the F-117 was revealed during the first Gulf War, that aircraft was being developed for 25 years out at Area 51. Actually, at Area 52 was where they had it set up to develop that stealth technology. Think about, and what was amazing, talk about keeping secrets. They had something like 10,000 people working on that. No one knew about it. That story was never broken by the press, not by anyone. It just suddenly appeared in the Gulf War and took out Saddam Hussein's, you know, facilities. That's a revolution in military affairs. What becomes interesting is then it becomes obsolete, because now everybody knows about it and everybody's going to mimic that, and now you have to have a new weapon system, and that's the military-industrial complex.
So was this drone aircraft that was released from the mothership, was this capable of autonomous flight, or was it just they just threw it out there and let it crash?
The latter, right? And remember, that information I am very limited to. That's why it's 12 pages. It's like the source gave me these little bits of information, which I felt was important to include because it speaks to the big issue. Why is Area 51 classified? I mean, now it's not. President Obama was the first president to actually say Area 51 publicly. Some people say because of my book, right? Meaning it was out. The secret was out. But before that, I went through 10,000 pages of documents from the National Archives. And every place you see, the word Area 51 was actually redacted. Right? Why would you keep that so secret? I mean, all the guys that I was interviewing say they could call it, you know, Groom Lake. They could call it the test facility. They could call it Paradise Ranch. But they couldn't say Area 51. Why? And the source said, well, because we did this horrible program out there, and the government doesn't want anyone to know about that ever. I mean, there's stories of, like, somebody asking Bill Clinton, you know, about Area 51, him going white. I mean, human experiments? Who wants to be part of that? It's horrible.
But the human experiments were they limited to this mimicry of the Russian experiments where they were trying to get people to look like aliens, or was there something else going on?
Well, my goodness. I mean, you read now, the declassified documents tell us how many different human experiments were going on around nuclear weapons, okay? Horrible experiments where they were subjecting people to radiation because they wanted to know. They felt, well, it's more important to know what happens to people than to not know. And so they would take groups of people that, say, had cancer or something and test them. So there's no doubt that the government has experimented on humans. It's just, is that something that is wise to make public? And, you know, there's two sides of the coin on that. I mean, you when you reveal these kind of things, when you write about them, I mean, people get really upset and, you know, vilify the government, partially with good reason, and partially it's like bad for national security. So I think that's the justification on the part of the Defense Department to keep things secret.
That makes sense. Wow, that's an interesting take that I never thought of before. But if I was Stalin and I was trying to, air quotes, fuck with the Americans, that's maybe the way I would do it. Hey, man, you got a problem. It's aliens, they're coming. And there was, it's hard for people that live in 2019, especially if you're young, to really imagine a world not only without the internet, but with 2 television channels, right? And radio, which was where people got all their information from. I mean, was there 2 channels? How many channels were there in 1947? Maybe 3? Maybe 3.
I mean, it was radio in World War II, right? Most people had radio.
Yeah, mostly radio and newspapers, and that's where people were getting their information. Right. And there was a mass hysteria where people were absolutely terrified that we were going to be invaded, which is why when Orson Welles' War of Worlds, which when they released it, when they did it on the air, they were very clear that this is going to be a reading of Orson Welles' War of Worlds book. Or that H.G. Wells, excuse me. War of Worlds, right? It was H.G. Wells' book, and Orson Welles read it.
Yes.
And when they were talking about this on the radio, a lot of people missed that part, right? Yes. And so as the radio went on, as the broadcast went on, and people were tuning in later in the day, it erupted in mass hysteria. People were freaking out. Hundreds of thousands of people really did think that it was, and it was also something that was recreated in other countries. I don't know if you know that. They did that in other countries in different languages when they saw how cute it worked in America. And, you know. Well,
so you see. You can see the logic. I mean, at first it sounds absurd and it sounds ridiculous. Yeah. And that's why I was sweating. Because it's like,
I know.
Right?
Right.
But when you think it through, and I challenge you to read the whole book because you start piecing together these various ideas and disinformation becomes less vague and more specific, and you go, that's how it works. And you begin to see how people's perception and how they're easily manipulated factors into national security, just like you just described. Stalin knew about that. He was a master. He was the master of propaganda. He invented it. I mean, he didn't invent it, but he invented it in on the political stage to be used to mess with another country's perception of things. Think of what he did with brainwashing, right? Okay, so like in the 50s, and this is journalists, said, so there was a journalist who was putting out stories about brainwashing, and there was this idea, which is well taken, that totalitarian governments brainwash people, and this became a big code word. It was introduced into the American lexicon in 1950. Well, then we're in the Korean War. Our pilots start getting shot down. They're put on TV by the communists, saying terrible things about America, the American pilots. And suddenly it was like, they've been brainwashed. It was very convenient to have that story. So these things work part and parcel, and you've got all kinds of smart people behind the scenes knowing this, looking at it, examining it, and using it to their advantage to stay where? In the pole position. That's the goal of the U.S. government.
So the propaganda that we did that sort of copied Stalin's, we were kind of playing catch up in that sense.
I mean, we're playing catch up, then we're ahead, then we're behind. It's always a game. You're a competitor, you know this.
But that's a crazy thing to do, to make a fake spaceship and just let it slam into the ground with a bunch of people that you cut up to look like aliens. Did he say specifically what kind of modifications they made to people that made them look like aliens?
I got drips. And you'll read it in those 12 pages.
Come on with this 12 pages.
I'm telling you that because you're asking me these questions as if I spent... I mean, look, I did spend literally hundreds of hours with this source. We sat there and talked about everything, and I would try to squeeze out, just like you're trying to squeeze out of me, and that's why I'm saying read it, because I literally tell you everything that there is. I think what's most interesting about the source and why I might come back and talk to you about it and tell you who he is on your show is because of his backstory, right? Why he did what he did, how he wound up in the Manhattan Project.
Sounds like he was probably Jewish from Germany. No?
No.
All right,
no.
Trying.
Okay.
Trying to get you.
What Jacobsen describes isn't wild fiction. It comes from her 2011 book, Area 51, an uncensored history of America's top-secret military base. Her claim is that the 1947 Roswell crash wasn't an alien event at all, but a Soviet psychological operation engineered by Joseph Stalin. According to the story, Stalin allegedly used grotesquely altered human beings, possibly children, to simulate alien life and drop them deep in American territory, hoping to ignite nationwide hysteria. It's a theory so disturbing it feels cinematic. But here's what we know from history. There is no verified evidence that the Soviets ever conducted biological alterations of human beings for such a mission. Stalin's regime certainly experimented on humans, particularly prisoners and the mentally disabled, in secret biowarfare programs like Unit 731's successors and Soviet Gulag science units. But no documentation ever surfaced suggesting surgical manipulation to mimic extraterrestrial life. However, the propaganda logic does fit the era. The late 1940s were a time of hysteria, Cold War paranoia, atomic secrecy, and widespread fear of Soviet infiltration. The Roswell incident exploded right in the middle of that atmosphere, and it's true that both the US and USSR conducted massive disinformation campaigns. The CIA and KGB each explored psychological warfare designed to manipulate populations through shock and fear. Still, Jacobsen's anonymous source remains unverified. Her crying engineer could never be corroborated, and no physical evidence of surgically altered bodies was ever found. Historians of the Manhattan Project and Area 51 dismiss the claim as a tragic blending of truth and trauma. A man possibly haunted by radiation experiments that did happen, but misremembered through guilt and age. What is undeniable, though, is that the US government carried out human radiation experiments from the 1940s through the 1960s, many without consent. Patients, soldiers, and prisoners were exposed to dangerous doses of plutonium and uranium in the name of national security. Those records are now declassified, so Jacobsen's story, while unsupported in its alien disguise, sits atop a mountain of grim reality. We did experiment on people. We did hide the truth. And somewhere inside that secrecy, myth and memory fused into legend, a legend that became Roswell. In the end, her line still haunts, greater than people who read that story always say, "I wish they were aliens." Because maybe the truth, that human beings did this to each other, is far more terrifying. The Harvard warning: are UFOs breaking Einstein's laws? On this episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, the conversation drifts from comedy to cosmology. Joe sits across from theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku, a man whose calm voice can make even the impossible sound rational. Kaku has seen the same videos the Pentagon can't explain: the Tic Tac encounter, the glowing orbs that move without sound, the objects that dive into the ocean and vanish. And then he says something chilling. The burden of proof has shifted. For the first time in history, it's not the believers who must prove UFOs exist. It's the Pentagon that must prove they don't.
The 2017 New York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift, because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person would see something in the sky and say, "Look, Martha, look, there's something up there." Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believed in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last just several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now, things have changed. Now people are looking at are they a threat militarily? What kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have frame by frame an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the g-force inside this object. The g-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any living person's bones would be crushed by these objects, so they're probably drones of some sort. These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop a tremendous distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but yes, they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier. So these are things that we can now document frame by frame looking at these videotapes.
So for yourself, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, there is this giggle factor, and it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation, if you believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days? 5 days you're going to look for flying saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera shy and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard now.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, is that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is plunging back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects apparently can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door to the possibility of other. They didn't specify what other was, but you can fill in the dots yourself. Now, one possibility for other is hypersonic drones. We see that in warfare now. The Russians, in the Battle of Ukraine, is actually using hypersonic drones to hit targets inside Ukraine. To be hypersonic, you have to go faster than Mach 5. Anything faster than 5 times the speed of sound is called hypersonic. And so the Russians are now fielding hypersonic drones in warfare. But you see, this is something just in the last few months. These sightings, they go back decades into the past, with objects executing these gyrations decades ago. And that's why you have to take them seriously.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way, that information has just not been released?
Well, 2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology to evade our Star Wars program. The Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a stationary Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now fielding it in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it because the military was invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones as well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States?
So one of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method. Right? There's essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Not only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they don't create any exhaust. We don't see any exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster. Now, if they are an optical illusion, if an object were to move in front of your eyes, traveling at a very slow velocity, but you don't know how far they are away, you may think that object is very far away from you, traveling at enormous velocities. So a weather balloon drifting in front of your eyes can simulate an object traveling at hypersonic velocities if you think that weather balloon is far away from you. So how do you tell the difference? Well, you look at wind patterns. It turns out that many of these sightings, these objects defy the direction of the wind. If they are weather balloons that you confuse with a flying saucer, then they would be moving with the direction of the wind. But these objects do not do that. These objects can go against the direction of the wind. Not only that, but we have multiple sightings. If an object is very, very far away, if an object is close to you, but you think it's far away, then it's traveling at an enormous velocity while it's actually just drifting in front of your eyes. How do you tell the difference? By having multiple sensors, radar, infrared sensors, visual sighting. Then you can tell how far this object is away from you, and then you can say that, nope, it's an optical illusion. Well, we do that now. We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know how the velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
Is there anything that's theoretical that you're aware of that could be applied, like from some other planet or some other galaxy or whatever, that something that maybe we have theorized that could be responsible for the way these things are able to move?
Well, when I talk to my friends who are physicists like myself about these things, they sort of laugh, giggle, their eyes roll up to the heavens, and they say something very simple, that a rocket using conventional means would take 70,000 years to reach us from the nearest star. Therefore, these objects cannot exist. 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket traveling at 25,000 miles per hour to go from a nearest star to the planet Earth. That's why most scientists disregard these sightings, because they defy the laws of Einstein.
But isn't that kind of silly? Isn't that kind of like saying, you can't, you know how long it would take you to get a horse from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia? Isn't that kind of like saying that?
Exactly. And that's why I say that assumes that these aliens or whatever are maybe 100 years more advanced than us. But open your mind to the possibility that they are 1,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000 years is nothing compared to the age of the universe.
Right.
The universe is about 13 billion plus years old. That's how the age of the universe. And so the age of a civilization, just a few thousand years ahead of us, that is just a blink of an eye to the universe itself. And once you go to higher energies, the laws of physics begin to break down. The laws of Einstein and the laws of the quantum theory break down at something called the Planck energy. Why is that important? That's what I do for a living. I work on something called string theory, which lives at the Planck energy. The Planck energy is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom smasher outside Geneva, Switzerland. Any civilization that could harness the Planck energy would be able to become masters of space and time. Space and time as we know it become unstable at the Planck energy, which is far beyond anything that we can muster here on the planet Earth. So, we physicists theorize, how advanced do you have to be to access the Planck energy? Well, we rank them. The Kardashev scale says that there could be type 1, type 2, or type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization is maybe 100 years more advanced than us, to maybe 1,000 years, sort of like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. They control the weather, volcanoes, earthquakes, anything planetary they control. That's type 1. Then there's type 2. Type 2 is stellar. They harness the power of an entire star, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization where they manipulate entire stars. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They play with black holes, like the Empire of the Star Wars series would be a typical type 3 civilization. Then the next question is, what type do you have to be to harness the Planck energy? The energy at which space and time become unstable, where wormholes may develop, gateways through space and time, portals through empty space. You have to be type 2 or most likely type 3. Then the next question is, how long will it take before you become type 3? Well, we are maybe 100 years away from being type 1. We're maybe a few thousand years from being type 2, and we're maybe 100,000 years from being type 3. And 100,000 years is nothing on a galactic scale. The age of the universe is, as I said, over 13 billion years old. And so once a civilization reaches the Planck energy, that is a type 3 civilization, space and time become your playground.
What Kaku describes marks a genuine turning point in scientific culture. For decades, UFOs were dismissed as fantasy, but after the 2017 New York Times expose on the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, official footage changed that. The Tic Tac video, filmed by Commander David Fravor off the coast of San Diego, shows an object performing maneuvers beyond any known aircraft. It drops nearly 70,000 feet in seconds, turns on a dime, and leaves no visible exhaust or sonic boom. Kaku is right about one thing. Physics has no simple explanation for that behavior. A craft moving at Mach 20 without creating a boom or visible propulsion defies the laws of aerodynamics as we know them. The G-forces alone, hundreds of times Earth's gravity, would pulverize any living pilot, which means, if real, they are likely unmanned vehicles or something beyond that term entirely. But here's where the mystery deepens. In 2021, the Pentagon released a 9-page assessment confirming that out of 144 recorded encounters, 143 remained unexplained. The data showed no signs of Chinese or Russian technology that could move this way. So, what are we left with? Kaku proposes a hierarchy of civilizations, the Kardashev scale, that measures progress by energy mastery. Type 1 civilizations harness planetary energy. Type 2 control stars. Type 3 roam the galaxies, manipulating black holes and folding space-time itself. If such a species reached what physicists call the Planck energy, the threshold where space and time collapse into quantum foam, they could open wormholes, shortcuts through the universe. It sounds like science fiction, but mathematically it isn't. Einstein's equations allow it. Our technology simply can't reach that power. Yet. Still, we must separate wonder from fact. The evidence of advanced craft is intriguing, but incomplete. Optical illusions, instrument glitches, and classified military tests can mimic the impossible. Fravor's Tic Tac could just as easily be a hypersonic drone prototype, an experimental craft from a weapons program so secret that even other branches of government were unaware. And yet, despite all rational explanations, there remains that stubborn question. Who builds technology decades ahead of anything we can replicate? The truth may not lie in aliens or angels, but in the shadow war of nations, where science fiction becomes national security. In the end, Kaku leaves us with a vision both thrilling and terrifying. If these craft are not ours and not theirs, then somewhere out there exists a civilization that treats the fabric of space and time as Play-Doh. And if they can reach us, they already know we're here. The CIA insider who says we've recovered alien craft. On this episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe sits across from Mike Baker, a former CIA covert operations officer, a man who spent decades inside the world of classified intelligence. It starts casually, as most of Rogan's conversations do, until Joe brings up a stunning claim from the Pentagon that the United States has recovered craft not of this world. Baker leans forward. He doesn't confirm it, but he doesn't deny it either. What follows is a rare peek into how the government hides its deepest secrets, and how those secrets may include technology that humanity didn't build.
I saw you. I don't think the Pentagon had come out, because it was actually during the pandemic where the Pentagon came out. I don't think we talked about this last time, did we?
I don't think so, no.
Where they said they've recovered alien crafts. They said we have recovered crafts that are not from this world.
Is that exactly what they said?
Pull it up, young Jay.
Pull that up. That exact quote from
It's a sketchy.
Pentagon.
It's a sketch.
The
It's
Pentagon
actually
didn't say it, yeah.
that was the guy from Vegas, the guy from Nevada. What is his name? Was he a senator from Nevada?
Harry
Reid.
Harry Reid.
Someone that
Yeah.
Former senator.
Pentagon former contractor was the one that said it.
Oh, you're thinking of you're thinking of he's got an aerospace business out there that was funded in part by taxpayer money. That it was a sort of a pet project of Harry Reid's in a sense. I'm struggling to remember the guy's name. I should remember it because we've talked about it.
Lear?
No. Aerospace buddy of Harry Reid's. Can we Google that?
Is that the Skinwalker Ranch guy?
No. This is this guy is. They've actually still got a business. He's still developing right now. I think what he's trying to do is develop portable living.
Yeah, that is a Skinwalker Ranch guy.
That is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
That is the guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
The name's on the tip of my tongue.
I know. But if he's the one who said it, then it doesn't come from the government. The ATIP, which is that Advanced Aeronautical Threat Identification Program. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the most interesting thing that the government has come out and said is that yes, we did have an operation within the Pentagon, an office within the Pentagon. I've taught that was there to identify unidentified threats. Mm-hmm. Right? So we get something up in the air and we can't identify it. It's like the Tic Tac sightings by David Fravor. Yeah. And those guys. So
David Fravor, for anybody who's interested in this, please listen to him on the Lex Friedman podcast, because I had him on, but I had him on with Jeremy Corbell, who's the documentarian behind that Bob Lazar movie, and by himself, Fravor and Lex, they get deep into the technical specifications of their aircraft and why he believes that no known aircraft could have ever operated the way it is, and also how it was blocking their tracking devices, which is technically it's an act of war, but also it showed that it was aware of them.
Yeah, he's very credible. I mean, He's extremely credible. He's a good guy. I've talked to him a handful of times. I've sat and reviewed the gun camera footage with him as he's walked through it. Very credible, right? So that was a perfect example of why they had set up ATIP, right, within the Pentagon. Apparently not funded anymore as an operating office.
Because they probably got some new shit that they can't tell you about, because that one got out there.
Got to close it down.
That's in the New York Times
that's
already.
What you do.
That is what they do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, or you reallocate it's all in the budgets, which is again kind of why we do this show for Science Channel called Black Files, because we're chasing the budgets.
We finally got to that.
I know, right?
Jesus
right?
Christ!
I know.
We're 2 hours in.
I got like 2 other promos to do. I haven't even touched yet. So if I can help, people are thinking, "Wow, he's really slow this time." But yeah, if you follow the money, it's like an investigation, right? If not so much follow the money, but if you start pulling on those threads around budgets, or it's like with investigation and asset tracing, getting bank records is absolutely key if you can, legally get them during the course of an investigation. But with military operations, oftentimes those budgets for the most interesting projects and operational elements get buried into something else. Right? That's just the way it works, right? And so that's where you can
maintain secrecy.
To maintain secrecy, but that's it's so it's an exercise, and we don't obviously with Black Files we don't identify anything that's currently classified because we'd all end up in the who's gal, but we're looking at some pretty interesting things, and it speaks to where programs are going currently, right? You look at some things in the recent past and you say, okay, this is where this new development is heading.
And isn't it? It's an interesting conversation too, because for people that don't like secrecy and they don't think we should have secrecy, for national security and for the development of things, like the stealth bomb or like a lot of other things that show that we have military superiority over our enemies, it's important to have secrecy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can't function as a secure and safe and lasting republic without it, right? There's just no way. Now, people will say, "Oh, we should have transparency around everything." No, you got to draw the line. You got to you want to not overdo it, right? So you want to.
That's where I was going to get to.
Right, but
the overdo it part.
But you've got to have the ability to protect sources and methods. You've got to have a sort of a need-to-know policy around certain things, right, within national security concerns and the intelligence community. But yeah, again, it can be used as a weapon. You can overdo it. But
if you don't have security, you don't have the Manhattan Project.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. We don't. I mean,
you don't have many things. That
you think about
keep us safe.
You think about. China. Look at this. Now I'm deep into the show, and I'm just now bashing China for their theft of economic intelligence. But you look at the effort that they make in terms of stealing our intellectual property and research and development. Right? I mean, the idea that you don't protect your most critical information, whether it's operationally important or whether it's just again R&D for development of materials, and that speaks to the strength of your economy and. So yes, certain things have to be kept secret. But again, you can overclassify things, which tends to happen, right? You tend to just because you're trying to protect everything, right? So I'm just going to overclassify, and that also creates a problem then. So, trying to strike a balance, it's a human endeavor, so you never really get it right, I don't think. But
well, this is where people feel like the line when it comes to alien spacecrafts, and if the government knows and is aware of alien spacecrafts and alien technology, this is where the line of secrecy and being sworn to oath, where it crosses over into a need to know for the general public. Bob Lazar's story, the story about him working for S4, he was a physicist for Los Alamos Labs. That's been proven. He was on the employee list there. He also was listed in a newspaper article when he put a jet engine in a Honda. That he was a physicist at Los Alamos Labs, and he was a propulsion expert. Says he worked for Area S4, and says he was hired to back engineer UFOs, and says they never could figure out how these things worked, and that they were never going to because they really couldn't, because they were trying to keep everything secret. They couldn't share all this information with the general scientific community. And he's like, science doesn't work in these containment bubbles. You can't compartmentalize science and have only a few small propulsion experts sit around and try to figure this thing out, and then they fire them and bring new guys in, and no one ever gets it.
Right, which is what you can use against. I mean, if I'm trying to pull information out of another nation, right? If I'm targeting intelligence from, and they're developing some new ballistic missile system or whatever it is, propulsion system, then yes, I'm going to to play off of that desire on the part of engineers and scientists to have a collaborative community, right? And the Chinese do that very well, right? And particularly when they target Chinese Americans working here in the U.S. in potentially sensitive positions. This idea that we're all working together, and this is just what we should be doing. We've done. My company has done work trying to protect information for companies, pharmaceutical companies is a good example, where the scientists, the engineers, the doctors need that free flow in their mind. They got to have this free flow and this collaborating and this sharing of information. And meanwhile, you get the other side, where the bean counters and security personnel and all that, and they're going like, no, this is the lifeblood of our company. We can't risk losing this information, so we got to lock it down to the degree we can. Those two things don't necessarily coexist all that well together, but you got to try to find some medium. So, I think, there's the fact that the government came out and talked about ATIP, I thought it was a big step, right? That's a big deal for them, right? I mean, that they would discuss that. Do I think that they're hiding? Again, don't take anything. I wouldn't take anything off the table, right? Frankly, because I don't know, right? So it would be stupid of me to say no. They definitely aren't holding on to some propulsion system that isn't of this world or whatever. If I don't know it, I can't say absolutely not. But
wouldn't you want to know though?
Oh, sure, yeah. But how? What do you do?
Grease a few palms.
Is that it? Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
I'd let the government know right now. Listen.
Yeah.
I'll say a lot of shit that's not true. Just get me to the UFOs. Show me the UFOs, and I'll lie.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, we're doing. It is.
It's not true.
Yeah,
I'm lying. I'm telling you right now. Don't tell me.
No.
I'm lying. Because
Yeah.
if you tell me, I'm telling everybody.
He's telling everybody.
That's a lie.
Look, they know that.
I'm sure they know that.
They know that. They're writing it down right now.
The discussion between Joe Rogan and Mike Baker captures the uneasy line between national security secrecy and cosmic revelation. In 2020, the Pentagon quietly confirmed the existence of an internal UFO investigation unit, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP. It was a black budget project operating from 2007 to 2012, tasked with studying unidentified aerial phenomena. Officially, it was dissolved. In reality, its functions were absorbed into deeper, more concealed programs. Baker, with his background in intelligence, explains how these projects vanish, not by being erased, but by being hidden inside other budgets. Billions are buried in innocuous-sounding line items like materials testing or aerospace defense research. That's how secrecy survives. It doesn't disappear, it's camouflaged. When Rogan mentions reports of crafts not of this world, he's referring to comments made by astrophysicist Eric W. Davis, a Pentagon consultant who told the New York Times that he had briefed officials on materials not made on Earth. But here's where fact and fantasy collide. Neither Davis nor the Pentagon ever released proof of recovered technology. No photos, no lab results, no chain of custody. Only testimony from people who claim to have seen the impossible. Still, the structure of secrecy described by Baker is very real. Programs like AATIP and later the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force are genuine government projects. The mystery lies in what they found and what they didn't. Declassified reports confirm that multiple military encounters, including Commander Fravor's Tic Tac incident, involved radar lock-ons and visual contact with craft defying known physics. Yet every official report ends the same way. Insufficient data to determine origin. Baker's insight into overclassification hits a deeper truth. America's intelligence community has a habit of locking away even routine discoveries under layers of security clearances. It's not always about aliens, it's about control. Secrets once buried become power, and that's where the story turns. If technology has been recovered, whether extraterrestrial or not, the people holding it aren't scientists or journalists. They're defense contractors and intelligence officers bound by oath, by money, and by fear of exposure. Even Baker admits the paradox. Secrecy protects us, but it also blinds us. It keeps us safe and keeps us ignorant. So when the Pentagon hints that something not of this world may exist, the question isn't whether aliens are real, it's whether we'd ever be told the truth if they were.